You know, when it comes to classical music, there are a lot of dramatic stories. But honestly, few can top the one behind Mozart's Requiem. It's got everything: genius, a mysterious death, and a musical puzzle that we're still trying to solve over 200 years later. So what is the real story behind this legendary piece?
And it all starts with this single haunting quote, which Mozart supposedly said in his final days. It's the whole heart of the legend, right? The idea that the greatest composer of his time knew he was writing the music for his own funeral. It's an incredible thought. But is it true?
Okay, so let's get into the most famous part of the story. It begins with this really gothic, almost spooky image. You've probably seen it in the movie Amadeus. This mysterious stranger shows up and orders the Requiem, setting in motion what feels like a fatal prophecy.
And for a long, long time, that was the story everyone believed. A mysterious figure in a gray cloak commissions a mass for the dead, and the composer, already sick, becomes absolutely convinced that this is some kind of warning from beyond the grave. I mean, it's a perfect story, right? But the truth is so much weirder.
So let's break it down. The Gray Messenger? He wasn't some spirit or omen. He was just a clerk working for an aristocrat, a guy named Count Franz von Walsegg. And the Requiem wasn't a premonition. It was a commission to honor the Count's wife who had recently passed away. But here's the best part. The whole reason for the secrecy, the cloak and dagger stuff, it was because the Count had this little habit of secretly buying music from famous composers and then passing it off as his own. The whole thing was a cover-up for plagiarism.
All right, so we've debunked the ghost story. But that just brings us to the real tragedy at the heart of this. Mozart took the job, he took the money, but he would never get the chance to finish it. His last year on Earth was just this frantic race against the clock.
And you have to understand, 1791 was an insane year for Mozart. He was juggling some of his most famous works, like the Magic Flute. He didn't even really get to focus on the Requiem until the fall. But by November, his health completely collapsed. He was literally composing from his deathbed, trying to get it all down. But time just ran out.
Which leads us to the single biggest question in this whole saga. When we sit down and listen to Mozart's Requiem, whose music are we really hearing? Well, here's the breakdown. The powerful opening parts, that's pure Mozart, fully finished and orchestrated by him. For the big middle sections, he left behind a pretty detailed draft. All the singing parts, the bass line, the core ideas were there. But then, you get to the famous Lacrimosa section, and his handwriting just stops. Cold. After only 8 measures. And the final chunks of the piece, he never even started them.
So Mozart's death left his wife, Constanza, in an absolutely impossible position. She's grieving, she's drowning in debt, and she's holding a half-paid-for, half-finished masterpiece. What do you do?
Look, this wasn't just about art or preserving her husband's final legacy. This was about survival. She needed that final payment from Count Walsegg. To get it, she had to deliver a complete Requiem, and it had to look like Mozart had written every single note himself.
So she started asking around. First, she went to a good family friend, Joseph Eibler. He gave it a shot, but he was just overwhelmed. I mean, can you imagine the pressure? Finishing the final work of a genius, he gave the score back. So, the job eventually landed in the lap of one of Mozart's own students, a young man named Franz Xaver Süssmayr. He's the one who would ultimately create the version of the Requiem that the world knows today.
And the job Süssmayr had to do was enormous. He took Mozart's drafts and filled in all the missing instruments. He picked up right where Mozart stopped in the Lacrimosa and wrote the rest of it. Then, he composed 3 entire movements from scratch. And, in a really clever move, he tied the whole thing together by bringing back Mozart's themes from the beginning for the grand finale. This is the Süssmayr version, and for centuries, it was Mozart's Requiem.
But of course, once the secret got out that the piece wasn't 100% Mozart, a debate started. A debate that honestly is still raging today. Was Süssmayr's work good enough to share the stage with Mozart's? For 200 years, music experts have picked his work apart. They'll say his orchestration is kinda thick and clunky compared to Mozart's elegant style, and that the parts he wrote himself, well, they just don't have that same spark of genius. And then, in the 1960s, something incredible happened. A tiny scrap of paper was found, and on it was a sketch for this complex, brilliant Amen fugue, written in Mozart's own hand. The theory? This was something he planned to include in the Requiem. This little discovery just poured gasoline on the fire and kicked off a whole new quest. And that brings us right up to today. because now we don't really see the Requiem as this finished piece of history set in stone. We see it more like a living, breathing puzzle that we're all still trying to solve. Get this, since the middle of the 20th century, there have been more than 20 brand new attempts to complete the Requiem. This isn't just some dusty academic exercise, it's a passionate, ongoing mission to get as close as we can to what Mozart might have truly wanted. And these new versions basically fall into two camps. On one side, you have the restorers. They take Süssmayr's version as the foundation and just try to clean it up, fix some errors, make the sound a little more transparent and Mozart-like. On the other side are the recomposers. They take a much bolder approach. They throw out the parts Süssmayr wrote himself and compose entirely new music, trying their best to imitate Mozart's style.
Which leads us to one last, really fascinating question. After all of this, the myths, the tragedy, the desperate solutions, the endless debate, do we even need one single definitive version? Maybe the whole point, the very power of this piece, is that it is unfinished. It's a story of fragments, of collaboration, of human desperation and genius. And maybe, just maybe, it's a masterpiece that was always meant to be reborn.